Hey everybody, welcome back to Rusty Wrench Restorations. Alright, the last video we talked about removing the steering clutch components, and this one here we're going to go through removing the brake drum and the other final drive shaft over here. I didn't drain any oil out of here, so that's going to be a fun experience. One thing I did want to talk about, this is our steering clutch drive shaft that we were talking about in the last video. I think I kept calling it a final drive shaft, but anyway, this splines into the transmission gears, pinions, and then this is the gear that had the fiber clutch discs threaded in. Anyway, inside here, this is basically like our pilot bearing, and it sits inside this cup here, and that's basically, as a pilot bearing, the same thing as what you would have on a transmission going into a flywheel. So again, we'd have all those clutch discs, metal and fiber, around this gear here, and that's what transmits the driven torque from the engine and transmission through the brake rotor here, and eventually through the shafts that turn the sprockets. So anyway, I did want to bring that up. That's our pilot bearing where the steering clutches is inside there. It sits inside this house. So, or housing, sorry. So, first step here, there's a little snap ring on here. You're going to need to get yourself a set of snap ring pliers. There's all kinds out there. This one here, when you squeeze the handles, it opens. You let go of the handles, it closes. They have other ones where when you squeeze them, it closes and whatnot. You can get a set like this one here. This is made by the company Channel Lock. And this kind of does both, right? These are more for the snap rings that you see with the holes drilled in them. So in this setting that it's in right now, you can squeeze the handles and you'll see the tips will spread apart. And then I can simply shift this little red button here. And when I squeeze the handles, now they'll close, right? So you heard that little click. So in its neutral position, they're open, squeeze to close, squeeze to close. And then I can flip the switch, get back in the neutral position. Now they're closed, squeeze to open. So it's pretty neat. And they got different tips you can put on here. But these pins are for going into the holes on the snap rings. A little bit different than this one. This one doesn't have holes. It's just a snap ring that's in a groove around this spline gear here. So I don't know. I don't think these ones are going to open it enough to get it off. Let's see. Get it pretty close anyway. So we'll get it kind of close, and I might have to go get a scribe, but I usually get a screwdriver stuck in there, help pry it out. You don't want to damage it because you don't want to have to replace it if you don't need to. I guess that would help if I got it on this side so I could see it a little better. I could probably even use my screwdriver as an extra little oomph. There we go. Get that out of its little channel. There we go. So here's your snap ring. And basically what I was showing you was these snap ring pliers would go in between here, and we'd use those to open up the gap to get the ring out of that channel there. All right, so now that snap ring is off, I should, in theory, be able to get this brake rotor off. So we'll do a little wiggle in here. There it goes. So that's going to come off that axle. All right, so here's the brake rotor. It's got internal splines, and it goes onto the external splines of the final drive shaft, right? That's what's really through here. So again, that's the same on both sides. Oh, look at that. You got some kind of bug infestation, laying nests, making a mess. All right. So here's your brake drum. The brake bands and the steering clutch housings go around this section here, right? So that's off. Now I need to get this this final drive gear off. So if I roll it this way, this doesn't turn very good because we got some damage. But anyway, there's another snap ring on this side here. We don't need to take that off right now. So basically, let's see if I can turn it this way. If you can see, probably not, but there's a channel at the edge of this gear, if you will, this spline. That's where this snap ring snapped into. And that's what kept my brake rotor in place. The other snap ring at the back end is also just for that. When that brake rotor goes on, it keeps it in place so it doesn't go too far and rub against the inside of the final drive housing. I've seen them before when I've taken this apart and that snap ring wasn't there. And you could see worn into the final drive housing where I'm marking with my fingers here, where the brake rotor, and basically, it won't do it because that clamps on, or the snap ring's on there, but it was rubbing into the housing here. So if you have a crawler and you hear some weird metallic noises and rubbings coming from your final drives, that might be your issue. Either this snap ring on the back side here is broken or missing, allowing your brake drum to move outward and rub against the final drive housing. All right, so that's it for this side. Let me flip this over here. Everything's so heavy. I joke around saying I should have taken up knitting or making fly fishing lures. All right, anyway, what fun is that, right? All right, so let's see if I can kind of prop this against the... All right. Don't say I didn't warn you, all right? This final drive housing is cast. Though strong in the sense of support for bearings and gears and stuff, it's not like solid steel. If you drop this final drive housing, even from a distance like this, onto the ground, let's say it's concrete or something, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to crack. Don't ask me how I know, but I know. So when I had my Lindemann, the left final drive accidentally slipped off something in a similar setup like this, and it fell on my concrete driveway, and I have a nice little section missing out of there. My buddy Billy Edwards will tell you all about that. So, all right, enough of that. So now this is the exterior of the right-hand final drive housing. This is where we found the crack on the right-hand side. Here's my drive hub that should turn freely now, and it doesn't. There's something jammed up in here. We got to continue taking this apart. So next to come off is this cover. Due to time constraints, I went through and I pre-loosened these. I know we're building our internet relationship here, and we have trust issues already. You're going to be like, Steve, you make it look so easy. All those bolts and nuts just come apart so easy. They really don't. They all suck. But I'm trying to make it less boring for you to have to watch me unscrew all these things and fight with them. Again, Croyle, it's like literally within 3 feet of me at all times. I mean, this stuff is just amazing. Hopefully I get a sponsorship because... yeah, right. All right. So there's supposed to be 3 bolts on here. I have 1 bolt that is correct. Let me shut this gate real quick. All right. Sorry about that. The sun's setting and putting some funny light in here. Anyway, 3 bolts holding this bearing cap cover on, and I have 1 that is correct, although kind of damaged and marred up. I have another stud with a nut on it. That's not right, so that needs to be replaced. And then I have another bolt that's the right size, but it's got a flange on it, so it's not the right one. So needless to say, that hardware is going to get replaced. You guessed it, bag and tag. I'll write it on there when we're done with the video. I assure you I'm not going to forget where these go. All right, now it's time to remove the cover. As you can see, this one's stuck on here. That's fine. Get your little all 16th wrench. It's a joke. Loosen this up. All right, and then see if we can't get in and pry. Now again, these are cast, so you want to be kind of careful with it. Now when you take this apart, you can hear some, you're not going to hear it because I'm telling you to hear it. Oh my goodness, that looks great. Just joking. It looks terrible. So here is the back side of the final gear bearing retainer or cap, right? It smells so terrible. Anyway, what I want to point out is there are shims in here, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This one has 4 shims. What does that mean? Nothing, because they're all different sizes. But these shims, you can still get these, believe it or not, from John Deere. They're different thicknesses, right? So this one's really thin. It's like paper. And then these 3 are a little bit thicker, right? So there's 3 there. And then this one is a lot more stiff and rigid, you can tell. So there's 5 shims here. And there's 3 different sizes. And I forget, it's in the book. It'll tell you, but just keep these, know what side they go in. You may need to add or subtract when you go back for final assembly. Be wary as well, like once you clean this surface up, it could change what you have for readings. But anyway, don't lose these, don't throw them away. They're there for a reason. It's not a gasket, right? These shims are kind of damaged up. I love how people are so careful when they take this stuff apart as I'm hitting it with a hammer. Anyway, so keep those shims with that, that bearing cover. And you know that that's for this final drive. You do not want to mix these up because they could be different on each side. So this cover, obviously, it's got a precision fit that slides inside there. So don't expect to knock it off and take the cover off sideways. You saw I was just kind of hitting on here to twist it and get the screwdriver in to pull it straight out, right? On the inside here, it's hard to tell, I'm sure, in the video, but this surface is tapered, right? This is actually the outer race for this bearing that is in super bad shape. Let's see if I can bring this in here and let you check it out and get a bird's eye view. So yeah, that's terrible. See it moving side to side. It's really tight and dry. I mean, it's just terrible. There's all kinds of dried grease. I think that's grease. Bird poop? I don't know. Anyway, I guess it's grease at some point on that gear. It's very dry. That's not right. That's not supposed to be greased, right? We talked about how at the bottom of this final drive housing, there's this pan. In fact, here's another one I got from Ricky yesterday. So this is the final drive pan, if you will, or oil pan. It's basically like an oil pan. And this does have a gasket that goes around there. But the gear, got more show and tell here. Let me get a gear for you here so you'll understand a little better. All right. Parts and pieces galore. So, all right. Not sure what happened there, but anyway, this pan has a square plug. You can kind of see it here. I'll clean this out. It's all full of dirt and mud. You can tell they did a lot of maintenance on this one too. Anyway, this square plug is removed by inserting a 3/8 inch drive ratchet in there, and then you would loosen the plug. Obviously, this one's not going to come out without some help, but I have a feeling, because we're seeing grease in here, that when I take the drain plug out of this pan, there isn't going to be any oil in there. We're just going to have a big greasy mess. So, all right, well, let's continue on. I'm going to reset the camera and get this sun out of the sight here. Let's try this again with the camera thing. All right, so now we need to try to get this this bearing off here, right? So again, there's another snap ring in here. This one looks a little different than what the other one was. This one's smaller in diameter and a little bit thicker. Just clean some of this grease that's not supposed to be on there off. We'll insert our snap ring pliers, squeeze out. Let's see. Take us a couple little tries here. Gonna play around with that. Watch your fingers. Come on. You know, if I didn't have this on camera, I'd probably have this off by now. Come on. All right, I'm gonna trick it. So we're gonna put the snap ring in. I'm gonna stick a screwdriver in there when it's not looking like that. Here we go. You don't want to bend it too much because then you'll stretch it and you won't be able to use it again. You'll have to replace it. Ah, it got me. It was onto my tricks. Come on, buddy. I'm trying to make you YouTube famous here. Come on, get in there. All right. Got me again. You ever watch SpongeBob? 4 hours later. All right. Come on, buddy. It really just wants to stay in there. Let's try from the back. There we go. All right. This one likes it from the back. All right, kids channel. All right, so here's that snap ring. Again, a little smaller, same concept. So we'll bag and tag. And we'll use that as our final drive gear bearing retainer clamp or something to that effect. Now, this bearing may or may not come off easy. It looks like there's parts and pieces of the inner race that are broken. And I'm not trying to save this bearing, so I'm really not too concerned what happens with it. But at this point, I would put it in a press. And I have a press, but I don't feel like bringing this to the press or bringing the press to it. So we're going to use Steve's press. But at this point, this shaft on this gear should come out as it takes the bearing off, right? So I'm not going to set this on here and hammer it because I don't want to damage this final drive housing. You know what? This one's got a crack in it. So maybe I can show you what not to do. It probably won't break because it's already broken, but let's see if we can't hit this through. Boom. Now I need a little more juice to finish pushing it through. Tools and their uses. This is not how you use the hammer and a screwdriver, I assure you. There we go. All right, so this is let me get the proper terminology here for you because I don't want the YouTube police to get mad at me. Let's see, this one is the letter G. Excuse me. Final drive shaft. So steering clutch shaft, final drive shaft, right? So remember, there's a better mock-up for you. The steering gear shaft and the final drive shaft. Remember the female end of the pilot bearing goes in there, right? See if I can put this back together. It's going to make a fool out of me. All right, you kind of get the idea. So again, the fiber, I'm not trying to like repeat this. This is just actually kind of a really good visual here so you can better see how this goes together. Hopefully I can get this to cooperate. There we go. Fiber, metal, fiber, metal, fiber, metal, fiber, right? Remember? So our clutch rides on there. So as the transmission turns, it turns these fiber discs, which slide on the metal discs when the clutch is disengaged. When the clutch is engaged, pressure plate pushes everything together. These metal tab plates that are locked into our brake drum that is splined onto these outer splines, right? Oh my God, it's heavy. Whew. Is what ends up driving. That looks really good. Oh my goodness. I'm hoping that's just because I don't have this pilot bearing in there correctly. Let's see. Let's give it a whackaroo. Oh, that might be part of the problem here. I think I just have it on crooked. Let's see if I can break something else. All right. Come on back out. I think the bearing is just not there. The bearing just wasn't sitting in there. This pilot bearing doesn't seem too bad, but anyway, this should slide on there nice and easy. So we'll get a new pilot bearing for it. And when it's oriented on there properly, it won't wobble. Right, you see how it's wobbling right now. I don't think there's an issue. It's not bent or anything. It's just the gear's not on. Anyway, enough about that. Here's the bearing. This is a tapered roller bearing. So when I say tapered, hopefully you can see it in the camera, but this side is smaller than this side. So it has a taper this way and a taper this way. And that and the rollers are these pins here. So a roller bearing is designed to support weight axially, right? So the axle of your car, here's a shaft that's going through here, right? It supports it axially. The taper, that would be a regular roller bearing, which is straight across. A tapered roller bearing supports axially, but also, oh man, I got that all messed up, don't I? I know somebody's out there just caught me. I'm sorry, that's radially, right? So the roller bearing is going to support radially. So radiating out from your shaft or your axle. Being tapered, it also supports it axially, so along the axis or axle. So this would act as like a thrust bearing, if you will. And then there's ball bearings, which we'll get into, which are usually for radial support. But anyway, this is the tapered roller bearing that was in here. And lots of play and movement. Hopefully it's focusing in. You can see this inner race has some pieces missing. It's very dry. Right, like I said, it's supposed to be oil lubricated. So as I already stacked it over here, but the big gear, the bull gear that's in here, it rides inside that oil pan on the bottom, and that gear brings oil to the top, and it lubricates this other gear, and it spins around, and all that oil drips down over all the bearings and gears, and everything stays lubricated. Let me make sure this is still recording. My camera's probably tired of listening to me. Anyway, so with no oil in here and putting grease in here, I don't know why they did that. Another reason they may have done that is they may have known there was a crack here, right? And when this is cracked, it's going to leak oil everywhere. So putting some grease in there will help take care of that. Anyway, so now that we've pushed this final drive gear out, we can get the final drive gear, the pinion gear. We can pull it out of here. Let's see if it wants to cooperate with me today. Probably not. Come on, buddy. You can do it. It always amazed me how people can design things and think in advance of how big these holes need to be to get gears in and out. All right, here's our final drive shaft pinion gear, right? So again, covered and caked on this thick, nasty grease that actually doesn't smell too bad, but it's not gear oil. I'd prefer to smell the bad gear oil, because at least I know this taken care of properly. So with that being said, let me grab a super whammadine rag over here. My buddy Arvin, I'm sorry, Arvin, I'm sure Arvin's watching too. Alvin, you know who you are. My gear code guy, works on reduction gears for the Navy. Anyway, I'm going to clean some of this nasty grease off this tooth here. Alvin's probably like, what are you doing putting a wire brush on the face of a gear tooth? Oh my God. It's all good. So, clean this up a little bit. Geez, they're all so dirty, I can't even tell which one I cleaned up. Anyway, I think I did like 2 different ones. Anyway, you can look at the face of the gears. Lots of pitting. There's shiny here, not shiny here. So, I mean, it's not the best, but nothing's broken. There aren't any pieces missing. It doesn't look abnormally worn to one side or the other. So, we're going to keep it. So I'm going to clean this one up real good. Brake cleaner is my go-to for removing this kind of junk. CRC is a really good one. It doesn't leave a white, nasty residue, but whatever you want to do, parts cleaner, but get all that grease and junk and grime off there. So, because at this point, this grease that's on there, that's like Play-Doh, is just collecting dirt and metal debris, and it's sticking in there, and it's acting like sandpaper, and it's going to start really wearing down this gear train. So, all right, that's off. That's off. Inside this hole is another bearing, which doesn't turn. There it goes. So, holy crap, that's dirty and dry inside there. Well, so here's the other tapered bearing. So this goes on the inside, but as you can see, it doesn't turn. So this bearing is complete junk to the point where it moves, but it doesn't spin or turn. So there's part of our problem. Let's see if I can get this to turn on its own now. Nope. All right, so though these two bearings, these tapered bearings, which this is the inner, this is the outer, tapers on the outside, support that shaft radially, right? I'm gonna get my mock-up shaft here. So these bearings support the shaft radially. Because they're tapered, they also act as thrust bearings to keep that bearing centered. There's a better picture. That makes more sense maybe. Keeps that bearing from moving side to side, right? Keeps it lined up with that bull gear down there. Anyway, so even though these bearings are in terrible shape and it's greased with heavy grease that it's not supposed to be greased with, there's still yet another issue in here, because I should be able to easily turn this, because now there's no friction, no anything on there. So I'm willing to bet that the bearings that hold that big bull gear are they're in worse shape than those. They're completely wiped. So that'll be next. Man, this nasty grease is everywhere. So hopefully it works out. I mean, we already have a new final drive housing, so that's takes care of the cracked issue. The gears seem to be, so far, knock on wood, everything's in good shape there. I think really this whole thing was just a bad bearing issue. I'm going to try to zoom in here for a second and see if you can see inside. That is the outer race of that bigger second tapered roller bearing that I took out, and it looks to be about as dry as King Tut's tomb. So, or as dry as my humor. Anyway, so all that stuff will get cleaned. This outer race will get punched out. There's a seal. You can kind of see it here. Here's our nasty rubber seal that's broken. Garbage. More of that Play-Doh grease. I mean, it's just, I've never seen one like that. Anyway, at the end of the day, we'll get it fixed. We'll make it right, and we'll get it running again. So let me reset up this camera here, and we'll work on getting the drive axle out. All right, so trying to save a little time here, I decided to start taking off these bolts for the final drive pan at the bottom. It's 4 on the outside and 4 on the inside. And I noticed there's more crack down here. So this whole final drive has been tweaked or torqued at some point. Again, it doesn't really matter, but these are just the things that, you don't always notice when you're looking to buy something. So again, as you start peeling this onion back further, you find more and more. So I'm going to finish taking those bolts out, flip it over. Maybe I'll flip it that way. I'm kidding, it doesn't matter. Anyway, take the 4 bolts off on the other side and drop that pan. I'm thinking there's probably not going to be any oil coming out of here. That's going to be my bet. And I'm sure they put grease in there because the final drive was cracked. So basically this comes down to somebody knew there was a problem. They did a farmer fix and never went back to properly fix it. So I'll get that cover off, get the other bolts loosened up, and we'll show you how to take that hub and axle assembly apart. All right, well, here it is. I haven't taken this off yet. I removed the 4 inner bolts and the 4 outer bolts. I haven't removed the cover yet. I put some rags down here, so just in case there's some oil in there. Hopefully it won't make too big a mess, but let's see what we got going in here. What we got going on in here. We got you paid for your seat, but you only need the edge, right? Holy moly. Wow. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't see any oil in there. Wow. Well, let's dissect this. Let's talk about what we got going on here, because there's a lot. So, first of all, this is RTV. RTV comes in many shapes and forms. This one appears to have been blue at some point, but RTV, no matter the color, red, black, blue, clear, is not used here. This is what happens. You get RTV that squeezes inside, pieces fall off, and end up in bearings, and if it's in your engine, ends up through oil valleys and trays, and it's a mess. Like, just go get the right gasket. This stuff's really not that expensive, okay? Here's the other thing. I can kind of see some remnants of, I don't know what's in the, well, let me dump all that crap out of here first. Oh, look, a T-Rex femur. Anyway, there is a paper gasket that goes on here, okay? Paper gasket only. If you put RTV or gasket sealer or silicone or something on both sides of a paper gasket, you've completely eliminated the need to have a paper gasket. The paper gasket is designed that when oil goes in here where there's supposed to be oil, it will swell. The paper will swell, right? And it will give you a good seal that doesn't leak. So take the time. I mean, I don't even care if you get a piece of cereal box and punch out. You can kind of see where there's some remnants of paper. But what happens is when you put RTV on both sides of the paper, you basically seal that paper inside of itself. So you're kind of defeating the purpose. Anyway, that's my pet peeve for the day. Don't use RTV. I mean, it's got its purpose, but it's definitely not for a John Deere crawler final drive housing. All right, so that's number one. So this has got to get cleaned out, all that RTV cleaned off, and a correct gasket put on. This is just covered with dried grease. So again, something happened with the housing. I want to say at this point, either it had water in it and froze and cracked and leaked all the oil out, or they might have backed into a tree or a rock or something and caused this axle to shift and crack the housing. But what I'm gonna say probably happened at that point was obviously the cracks down here at the bottom also, and all the oil leaked out. And they knew the oil was leaking out, and they knew it needed to have oil in here for lubrication for the bearings and the gears. So they dropped this pan on the bottom and took grease and put grease all over this bull gear and rotated it and basically just greased the heck out of it and packed this thing with grease. And took blue RTV apparently and a paper gasket and put this cover back on. I'm sure at the time it was a good fix, right? It probably worked for, hell, probably months, maybe even years. But over time, water getting in here and rust and everything, that grease just broke down and no longer was doing what it was supposed to do. The problem about that grease is going to stick to these gear teeth. But now there's a bearing here and a bearing in here that aren't getting lubricated because the grease isn't making it to the bearings, right? If this was designed to have grease in it, there'd be Zerk fittings or grease fittings where you could lubricate the bearings. But it's not. It's a wet sump system. This gear, this is kind of a better angle now. You can see how the gear sticks out and goes into this pan. So this pan gets filled with oil, right? And as you're operating it, the gear goes into the oil, it dips it in, it's like an oil bath, and it brings the oil up and it gets on this other pinion gear, and oil just from natural gravity is going to come down and it's going to lubricate the 4 bearings that are in here. So being is that there was no oil in here and they did a temporary fix poorly with grease, I guarantee you that's what happened. And I'm sure this bearing and this bearing are wiped, because now there's absolutely nothing stopping me from turning this. I mean, it turns. It's so tight. And look at all this just junk caked in here. Wow, this is terrible. All right, well, now we know what the problem was. Someone did a poor fix, right? I get it. You know, sometimes you're in the field, you're on a job, you got to do what you got to do to finish, but you got to go back and fix it the right way. I think I brought that up in like the second or the third video, where anything worth fixing is worth fixing right. So apparently whoever owned this or did this repair, it wasn't worth it to them. And now I got to pay for it, but that's all right. We're going to do this right. We're going to get it fixed up. We're going to get it cleaned up. We're going to get it so that I can turn this axle with one finger, and this bull gear will just spin for as long as it wants. But all right, so it's getting kind of late today. I'm probably going to stop here. But at this point, basically, in case I don't go back to finish this video, actually, let's just do this real quick. We got some time. I already pre-loosened these. I told you we're going to have internet trust issues here, thinking that these nuts and bolts come off so easy. But I assure you, they don't. All right, so here is the inner bull gear that I'm going to call it cap. Again, we'll give it a little tappy tap with my all 16ths rubber mallet here. Sometimes you gotta give it a little more finesse, and sometimes. All right, so I don't recommend this, but I'm gonna go with a metal hammer just to loosen this. I have another one of these caps, so in the event I crack it, I'm all right. So basically what's happening now is this crappy bearing that's in here, the outer race of it is inside this piece. In fact, look at that. So here's the same piece, and the bearing sits inside here. And I'm trying to remove this flange from inside the housing right now. So it's going to take a little bit of working back and forth, and I might need to try to get a flat tip in there, but we'll get it. Sorry, I know that bang is probably terrible. Let me stop the video. I'll get that off, and we'll resume in a second. Alrighty, here we are back again. Get that piece off, and you can see the this inside bearing here is full of yet more crud and junk. So what we're dealing with here, let's see if I can do this while I'm holding the camera and clean this off. These are locking tabs that keep these 2 bolts from loosening up. So you can see there's a tab that's flat here and here, and then this one's bent up over the nuts. So I'm going to get my screwdriver, bend those tabs down, remove these 2 bolts, take this plate off, and that'll open up this side to remove that axle. Well, it'd help if I get this in the frame now, wouldn't it? So I'm going to bend these tabs down, remove these bolts, take this plate, and hopefully we can get this shaft pushed out. I can't keep this thing in frame. All right, let's see what we can make this happen here. Let's set this up here. How's that? Can everybody see all right? All right, that's gonna have to do. All right, bend these tabs down. Let's get a flat tip. Start to bend them a bit and then tap them down. They are reusable. Sometimes if you've had them on and off, they've bent enough where they'll snap off and you can't reuse them again. That's fine. You still have backups here. You can use one of these 2. All right, you don't have to do both tabs, both retainers. So that should do that. Let's get a socket here. That was a good guess. All right, let's get this on here. Get this in a good position. Here we are, we're going to deal with things turning again. So, get my trusty crowbar over here, and I'm going to stick it. Oh, that's my ankle. All right, I'm going to stick it through this bull gear here. I'll try to. There we go. Hold that in place. And tap this. All right, got that one loosened up. That's the bottom one. Let's go for the top one. Watch your fingers, kids. You only got 10. All right. Here we go. Here's one. Here's two. And I'm going to keep this whole assembly together. I mean, it doesn't matter. You take it apart. I'm just going to keep it together so I don't lose the stuff. But, all right. I've got the 2 bolts, this locking tab washer, and this plate. Oh, there's that gear oil smell. There you are, buddy. All right, so now I got those. And what do you think I'm going to do with these? That's right, bag and tag. Bag and tag. Now they're bagged. I'll tag it later. I can pull this out. Get this, where'd my little wire brush go? I feel like Bob Ross over here looking for a paintbrush. All right, so just kind of clean this up a little bit so you can see what's going on. But you got that shaft, and you got the bearing housing here. That bearing spins. That one's not too bad. Doesn't spin the best, but all right. Kind of turns a bit. All right. All right, I'm going to have to stop here, and I'll come back to this tomorrow. So basically, let's see if I can get this back down again so you can see a little better. There is a pipe plug here, right? It's, clean that up a little bit. You might be able to see it a little better. So basically kind of the same thing as like the drain plug for the pan here. Use your 3/8 drive to go in. See if we can even get this one moving. I like to use these dead blows. They work pretty good for giving it that little shock to get it moving. Or of course, use some Croil. All right, so obviously I just boogered that up. I wasn't even paying attention, so I just stripped that out. So I'm gonna have to clean this up tomorrow, soak it, heat it, get this plug out. There's another one, believe it or not, in here. Under all this rust and dust and crust. All right, so there's another one in here. All right, so I'm going to soak these tonight, but those need to come out. And then basically, I'm going to thread a puller in here, but instead of pulling, we're going to push. We want to protect this shaft, and we're going to push that on through. On the back side of it, there's a plate here, which I think I have one to show you. There we go. So this is on that back side. There's 4 bolts. I got to loosen those up. And basically we're going to push this shaft, which is this piece right here, right? You see the two bolts we just took out. And remember it had the taper that went into this bull gear. So we're basically going to push the shaft out of that bull gear and out of this housing. Probably could have been a little better prepared, but that's how that bolts on that back side. So that will happen tomorrow, but fortunately due to internet magic and video and editing, it's going to happen for you right now. So for this part of the video, we're going to be trying to remove the axle shaft from the final drive housing. Saw one of the other videos trying to get these loose. I kind of buggered this one up, but I let them soak overnight with Croil, as always, and they came right out. So what these plugs are designed for, when you take them out, is you're supposed to be able to thread in. It says 5/8 11. They're bigger than that. Rods basically for a hydraulic press to press this axle through the bearings and out the other side. Unfortunately, I don't have a press or a puller that's going to fit in there, so we're going to have to kind of improvise a little bit. Basically, where this cover went on here, I'm going to use those 2 bolt holes as my threaded holes to thread into instead of these 2 bigger ones. So basically, I'm going to get a piece of, I think it's like 1/4 inch, maybe a little thicker steel bar, and cut one about 8 inches long. And I'll drill a hole through the bar so that I can put 2 grade 8 bolts in here. And then in the center, I'll drill another hole for probably a 5/8 11 bolt, and I'm going to weld a 5/8 11 nut on the bottom of that bar. And basically, once that nut will sit on this part of the axle, with the plate over the top, the 2 bolts will hold the plate in place. And then when I thread the bigger 5/8 11 bolt through the plate, through the welded nut, it'll hit this axle shaft and basically act as kind of a press, if you will, to press the bearing out. I don't know if it'll work. I'm not really too sure how tight this is pressed on here. Worst case scenario, I have a new gear, I have a new axle, I have the new spacer, I have all the other components. So if I can't get this one apart, then I'm not really going to stress it too much. But so let's go ahead and fabricate the pusher, if you will. It's not really a puller, but a pusher. And let's see if we can get this thing apart. So, take a couple quick measurements here, just rough measurements, so I know where my centers of my bolt holes are here, as well as my center hole. All right. And then I'll go ahead and drill 3 holes. I'll do the 2 smaller holes on the outside here that are going to thread into these holes. And then I'll drill a center hole big enough for this 5/8 11 bolt. And then basically, after I drill this center hole, I'm going to weld this nut onto the bottom. And we'll bolt this plate onto here. And this 5/8 11 bolt will go through the hole, thread into that nut, and put pressure on this plate up to hopefully push this axle shaft through. So let's see if we can get it to work. As you can see, none of this is super precise. It doesn't have to be exactly measured out. It's pretty simple bolt holes. So as you can hear, it's starting to rain. Always fun. Let's see what we can do here. A little bit of coil on here, always helps. Let's get the center one going first. It's the bigger of the 3. So when it comes to welding 2 pieces of metal together, in this case, one of these nuts and this metal bar that I had drilled the holes in to make this press, if you will, is cleanliness. So you want to make sure that both surfaces are clean and free of, obviously, rust and dirt and all that, but even just surface rust and scale. Even like these nuts, they're new, but they still have a coating on them to prevent rust. So I just use this wire knot cup for my angle grinder and clean up both surfaces down to bright bare metal as best you can. I always use a face shield when using these Wire wheels, like glasses are great, protect your eyes, but these wires shoot off all the time and they'll get stuck in your face. I find them in my legs, in my pants, so be mindful of that. That's it. Doesn't take much, but you can definitely see a difference. Nice shiny clean metal on both surfaces means good weldy. Good metal glue. Let's do it. All right, so let's go ahead and get this nut welded to this plate. I've got the plate and the nut, which we've cleaned. Now the only problem I run into is how do I get this nut centered on this middle hole while I weld it. So the easiest thing is I'm just going to take a short bolt, go from the back side, same size bolt that's going to go through for my press, if you will, and I'll just thread this in. So now I know the nut is centered on the hole, so that once I weld it and I take this bolt out, I can use my bigger bolt as the press, right? So we've got that on there. It doesn't have to be tight. You can use clamps, whatever you want. Nothing crazy here. I got a Lincoln 115 wire flux wire feed welder. We'll turn it on. I've got my wire feed speed set for what I typically weld with. This one here, I'll probably do, there's a couple different settings. There's low, high, 1 and 2. I'll probably do a high 1 for this one. Invest in a self-darkening welding helmet. Highly recommend this. It saves you from having to, you know, look at the work that you're working on and then like kind of staging your welder and then like having to cover down. Like you can look through. Sorry, I know you can't hear when I do that. I can look through, I can see where my work's going to start, and as soon as I strike that arc, the auto darkening will tint, and I can continue welding. So we're just going to get a couple tacks around here, nothing too crazy. And of course, don't forget to hook up your ground, because if I don't, it won't work. The metal gluer will not function properly. All right, I think that's everything. Let's see what we can do. All right, I'm gonna bump this up a little bit more. There we go. So you might have to play around with your settings a little bit for both wire feed and temp. But so I'd bump this one up a little bit hotter. You want to make sure you got good metal penetration. I'm not trying to get out there and try to jack on this tool to push the shaft out and my weld breaks on me, right? So I'm going to finish tacking around the rest of this nut and we'll see if this thing works. All right, well, let's see how this works. I'm a gas turbine guy and I'm a tractor restorer, but I'm by no means a welder. We can kind of stick metal together, but I wouldn't want to have any QA inspections done on it. All right, so the plan here, I have the plate and I've got the washer welded on the end. My awesome welding job. And I've got my smaller bolts with some nuts as spacers. Start threading that in there. I got my other bolt with my nuts and washer and spacers. Thread that in here. Now, mind you, this final drive housing is already cracked. So I'm sure there's probably going to be professional John Deere crawler people out there that see me doing this and they're like, what are you doing? So use at your own risk, right? This isn't what the book says to do. So let's see what we can do. Something's going to give, right? You apply mechanical force and leverage to several different objects. One is going to let go. And I'm hoping that it's the axle shaft here. So I'm going to tilt this up, put this pan underneath. So now let me turn this so you can see it, because that's kind of the whole point of this, right? All right. So I've tightened those down. Now I'm going to take my larger bolt. I'm going to thread it through that nut that's welded on the bottom till it bottoms out. So now that bolt is hitting on that shaft. So this is my homemade, improvised axle shaft pusher. So sometimes you have to think outside the box. And the beauty of it is, if this works, now I have this tool, and I'll have it for the next time I need it. So let's get the correct size socket here. Of course I don't have one with me. Let me pause this real quick and go get the proper size, and I shall return. Guess who's back with the right size socket? So let's bring up another point here. I was using a 3/8 drive ratchet, being is that I'm going to a larger size. This is a 1 inch, I believe, 15/16, close enough. Decided to bump it up to the 1/2 inch drive. So, you know, prevents damaging your tools, right? We won't want to use a 1/4 inch drive, little ratchet on here. It's not going to work, right? Or we'll break the ratchet. So, all right. So, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. We'll put this on here. And I've got my torque amplifier if needed. So let's see what happens here. Oh yeah, it's pushing. There we go. I like it. She's moving. All right. I see it kind of hanging up a little bit over here, back here. There are 4 bolts back here on this collar that you're supposed to loosen up and remove as much as you can. But I'd be damned if I can't get my ratchet in there. Let's see. That's not going to happen. So it's coming, but one of those bolts is starting to stick. So I'm going to do a little poking and prodding around here. Let's see if I can get a screwdriver in there. Kind of even the pressure a little bit. Anyway, let me get these bolts out. I didn't think I needed to. I figured the axle shaft should slide right through, but apparently it's hanging up. So let me do this the right way, and we shall resume yet again. But the puller works with the pusher, so success there. Guess who? It's me, back again. All right, we got that resolved. So let's continue on here with our pressing. Oh, get this back up. Oh, fighting it on me. Just lift it back up here. It's coming out really good for a while. Now it seems to be sticking again. These are all loose on this side. All right, I see it starting to bend my plate here. You can see the bearing pushing out. So anyway, that's the process. We push this axle shaft out. This is what we're pushing on right here. You remember from yesterday, that big bull gear gets splined on these external splines. So we're pushing on this shaft right now and basically pushing the axle out from the bull gear and the bearings. So a lot of resistance there. I'll soak everything down for the night, and we'll finish pushing it out tomorrow, but you get the gist. But good to know that tool works. So it's starting to bend a bit, so that just means I'm overstressing that. I don't want to break it. And put some more coil on there, let it soak, maybe heat it up, and get it pushed out tomorrow. So thanks yet again for watching. I appreciate y'all. Peace.